One thing that always bothered me as a Christian was the apparent discord between science and the Bible. The story of Genesis, for example, seemed to be completely at odds with important scientific concepts like the Big Bang, evolution, and even the age of the universe. It was a great comfort to me in college when I discovered the book, The Science of God, by the physicist Gerald Schroeder. The Bible, Schroeder explained, was actually not at odds with science at all. Evolution was easy. God had used evolution as a way to create us. Adam and Eve were created when God gave the first evolved humans a soul. The Big Bang was also easy. That was simply what God had used to create the universe. The hardest part for me was the timeline, and this is where Schroeder's book really shined. Secular and liberal people who criticize the Bible for not providing the right time frames for the creation of the universe, as well as young earth creationists who think the Bible has the right time and that science is wrong, are both omitting from their reasoning one of the most important discoveries that Einstein introduced through his theory of relativity. Time is relative. The time experienced by a person in one gravitational or velocity reference frame is different from the time experienced by someone in another. There is no absolute time. So if we are considering how much time has really passed throughout the whole universe since the Big Bang, the time we've experienced on Earth cannot be held as the de facto standard. And Schroeder had found a reference point that actually matched up with the 6 days of creation referenced in the Bible in the form of cosmic background radiation. This radiation had one frequency based on its temperature at the beginning of the universe and had another when the Earth was formed. And if you calculated the mathematical relationship between these temperatures and applied them to time, you found that 6 days translated to 15 billion years, which is approximately the age of the universe as observed from the Earth at the present day. This knowledge excited and inspired me. This was the missing link. I remembered seeing Darwin fishes on the back of people's cars, mocking Christianity in the liberal city where I went to college, and thinking, if they only knew, if they had only read Schroeder's book, they would understand that there was no conflict between Darwin and Christianity. Science and the Bible were two sides of the same coin in God's beautiful creation. There was no conflict. I fiercely argued this point on one of the forums that I frequented. Many atheists there seemed generally impressed by my arguments and the way I presented myself. A few still scoffed at me, but they also showed little knowledge or interest of gaining knowledge of the Bible, so I dismissed them as uninformed. Schroeder's argument had given me a way of reaching out to non-believers. It was becoming clear to me that the only reason people were atheists was because they thought science conflicted with the Bible. As soon as they understood why science didn't conflict with the Bible, they could believe. During this time in my life, I'd made a point of writing reviews on Amazon.com for books and products I'd purchased. One item I'd written a review for was a digital Bible I'd purchased for my PDA. From time to time, I would check back to my reviews to see if anyone had found them helpful. On one of these occasions, I came back to see another review had been written after mine. It was titled, Same Problems. After the problems of navigating in it are mastered, the reader of the Bible will find the same old problems of credibility that exist in any of the other Bible translations or formats. The talking snake, the sun and stars created after the earth, the sun placed in the sky after fruit trees are on the earth, woman created after man, rainbows not occurring until after Noah's flood, sticks turned into serpents, a woman turned into a pillar of salt, little children killed on God's orders because they were unlucky enough to have the wrong parents, and so on. I'm still waiting for the Bible translation honest enough to begin in this sort of way. Warning. Literal belief in these stories may be hazardous to your health. Bear in mind that they were written by primitive and superstitious Bedouin shepherders, ignorant by today's standards. At first, I was very perturbed by this review and found it completely inappropriate. My review and most other people's reviews had been about the navigation issues of this Bible. No one had had the audacity to write a review about the content of the Bible itself, a topic which I felt was too massive and intricate to fit into an Amazon review. But then I caught myself. This was probably just another person who didn't know that the Bible and science were compatible. Instead of judging them, I should reach out to them. So I sent them a kind email assuring them that there was no conflict between science and the Bible, and suggesting that they read Schroeder's book. The reply I got back was intimidating. The man had been a professor in linguistics and involved in academia for almost 40 years, and had taught in universities all over the world, including Stanford, Georgetown, and the State University of New York. He was also a former missionary. When he was my age, he said he had been equally confident about his own Christian beliefs. He told me that all changed for him when he was attending the University of Madrid, and Ramon Menendez Pidal, head of the Royal Spanish Academy of Letters and the foremost historical scholar of his time, invited him to use his private library in his home just outside of Madrid during the academic year of 1961 to 1962, where Ramon explained to him with ample documentation how the Bible had been put together over the centuries. That kind of varied cultural and linguistic background, he said, enables me to appreciate the fact that there is no way for most people from the Judeo-Christian tradition even to begin to understand what they mean by the term God, unless they are at minimum acquainted with material such as found in easily accessible books like A History of God by Karen Armstrong and Who Wrote the New Testament by Burton Mack. What physicists in general write about God is, within an adequately educated perspective, simply childish and silly from even a rudimentarily historical point of view. He said he had actually already read The Science of God, and he was not impressed. He explained how physicists like Schroeder have a tendency to reach beyond areas of their expertise, make foolish mistakes in reasoning, and show little comprehension for the cultural context of the humanities on which they are commenting. But if Schroeder's book makes sense to you, then that helps you at this stage in your life. I felt a mix of emotions in response to this letter. First, I was a little annoyed by that last statement, which I found condescending. Second, it was clear that I was completely outclassed by this man in terms of experience in theology and the humanities. Finally, this was the first time that I had felt a real challenge to my beliefs by a sophisticated, knowledgeable, and well-spoken person. It was clear to me that talking to this person was exactly what God wanted me to do. I had never heard of the books he had mentioned. I had never heard anyone say the types of things that he was saying. It was clear to me that God was bringing me knowledge through this man, and I was sure that once I had received that knowledge, God would use me to turn him back to a relationship with him.